Of all the models you can own, rocks are some of the most useful, because regardless of the climate or location, they can be found everywhere, from deserts, the Arctic, underwater, and even other planets. Rocks are one of the most common elements of the universe, which makes sense since they are essentially planet matter. So whether you're making architecture or a fantasy scene or an alien sci-fi planet, rocks are a necessary part of making the environment feel complete. But the problem is that making realistic rocks is difficult. You see, the traditional method is to first model the shape and then apply a texture to it. But real rocks are organic. Their shape and their texture are directly linked. So where there's a bulge or a crevice, the texture changes. But if you model first and then apply a texture to it, there's no relation between them. Which is why most CG rocks you see look pretty average. And for a while, I just accepted that that's the way things would always be. Until I discovered a new method, photoscanning. Photoscanning is a completely different approach. Instead of starting at the computer, you start with a camera. You go outside, find a real rock, then take multiple photos around it. You then import the photos into some photoscanning software and let it magically create a mesh out of thin air. But what makes it really powerful is that as well as capturing the real-world shape, it also captures the exact texture and maps it to the mesh, resulting in a model that's physically true to the real-world subject. So, photoscanning is undeniably awesome, but there's a reason it's not as popular as you'd think. Time. While it sounds like it'd be quick, proper photoscanning actually takes several hours. You've got to find the subject, wait for ideal lighting conditions, photograph it 50 times, let the software analyze the photos, manually retopologize the mesh, bake the detail into separate maps, and then do tests with the material and settings until it looks right. All up, this process can take a skilled artist anywhere from 5 to 8 hours. And honestly, this is wasted time. If you're an artist hoping to get a job in the industry, or even just make something cool to post online, nobody cares if you actually make the rocks yourself. It's what we call a secondary element, something that complements the scene but isn't the focus. There's already so much you need to learn in the CG industry, so focus on what matters and leave the background stuff to somebody else. Which is why we made the Rock Essentials, a collection of 267 photoscanned rocks, captured by photographers around the world and processed professionally to work with Blender. This is the largest, most versatile pack of photoscanned rocks ever created, not just for Blender, but any software. It's got rocks ranging in size from human height right down to pebbles, ensuring that no matter the environment, there's always something suitable. Normally, photoscanned models are extremely dense and difficult to work with, but each of ours have been baked and retopologized for you, so you can choose how detailed you want the rock to be by just changing the level of subsurf. Plus, if you press the N key, you'll find a list of handy controls for adjusting the saturation, reflection, hue, and more, giving you the ability to adjust the material without needing to go deep in the node setups. But besides just standard rocks, we want to give you the tools to make fantastic scenes. And for that, you need a few extra things. Starting with large rock formations. These are surprisingly hard to find online, as the amount of detail in them is super time consuming to create. But we know how valuable they are, so we hired professional sculptors to model and texture them using photoscanned and standard sculpting brushes. The result is a rare collection of realistic large rocks that are great for making the scene feel wider in scale, as well as adding balance to the composition. So far we've got rocks and cliffs, but we want to help you even more. And so for that, we've got 13 photoscanned ground materials. These are better than standard textures because the height information is physically accurate to the subject, resulting in materials that look breathtaking. And when combined with the rocks, you've got unbeatable photorealism. But when it comes to scene building, you can't beat this next bonus. Photoscanned rock brushes. This is a collection of sculpting brushes that's unlike anything you've ever used before. Normally, sculpting brushes are smooth and require you to sculpt the detail yourself. But these were created using height information scanned from real sections of cliffs, which means that the detail is already in the brush. So you can sculpt realistic rocks in just a few clicks. And if you're not a sculptor, don't worry, because I'm not either. But I think you'll find them invaluable for scene building. Like you can make large rocks that peek through the ground, or even sculpt an entire cave by hand. Use them once, and I'm sure you'll be using them repeatedly for every scene you make. Then, after you finish sculpting, there's 47 pre-made rock materials to choose from. These have been photographed from various rock types around the world, then made seamless, converted into normal and other maps, then set into ready-made realistic materials for Blender. Which means after you finish sculpting something, you don't need to waste time downloading textures and setting up elaborate node setups. You can just cycle through the pre-made materials, saving you time and letting you focus on the artwork. So that's the Rock Essentials. To summarize, you get 267 photoscanned rocks, 23 large rock formations, 13 photoscanned ground materials, 33 photoscanned sculpting brushes, and 47 realistic rock materials. Together, they create the most versatile toolset for creating rock-covered environments ever. If you wanted to make this pack yourself, you'd need a minimum of 1,865 hours to complete it. Due to the amount of time required to make them, photoscanned rocks usually go for around $50 to $150 each. Which means if you wanted to buy just the 267 rocks alone, you'd be looking to pay a massive $13,000 to $30,000 for them. And that's just for the individual rocks. For the 23 large rock formations, you'd need another $1,150. And the photoscanned ground materials, sculpting brushes, and rock materials add another $400. Which means all up, if you wanted to purchase everything I've just mentioned, you'd need a staggering $14,900 for just the assets alone. And even then, you'd still need to spend hours retopologizing them and configuring them for use in Blender. But the price of the Rock Essentials isn't $10,000 or even $1,000. It's just $397. That's all you pay to never have to worry about rocks again. It's every type of rock and tool needed to create jaw-dropping environments in Blender. Or if you're the sort of person that doesn't need all the extra tools, but wants a more minimal collection, we've got the Rock Essentials Lite version, which includes most of the photoscanned rocks and large cliffs for just $217. And to put your mind at ease, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. This means that if for whatever reason it's not what you expected, you can email us for a full refund. Now, I honestly think you'll love it because I really do stand behind the quality of the product. But I want you to be comfortable with the purchase, so the 30-day guarantee is there to cover you. Alright, so that's the Rock Essentials. If you're ready to download it, just press the Add to Cart button now, and you can start making realistic renders in minutes.